Welcome to the call. Stream should be transferring over. If you're on YouTube, give me a holler in the chat. Okay, we have officially moved over to the Ethereum PM repo, which you've potentially noticed. So the merge calls moved over here a while ago. The consensus layer calls are now there. The ETH2O repo is deprecated and archived. Join me in Ethereum PM. The issue today is 418. This is call 76. Making progress. Okay, so we'll start today with Kintsugi office hours. Thank you for those from the execution layer that have joined us. Then we'll do some other client updates, any other discussion items, and close it out. Let's see. So I wanted to start with merge devnet 0, which I believe is actually in progress. Perry, can you give us an update here?
Hey everyone. So yes, Merge devnet 0 was launched a couple hours ago. We haven't hit total difficulty yet, but the consensus clients are merge ready. They're on the merge fork. I have already, so Danny just shared the configs over there. Expect things to still change because it's one of the first merge devnets we're trying. And yeah, otherwise you should be able to join. I have a bunch of extra validators. There's a non-zero deposit contract. So once the merge is done, you should be able to try the onboarding validators as well. There is an Explorer, but there's an issue with the Explorer currently, and I'm trying to figure that out. And I will link any other debugging tools in a bit. That's about it.
Great. And I think we'll probably get into this in the client updates in the next section, but I would presume we might have a successful transition, hopefully. But things might be a bit brittle with respect to the state of optimistic sync. So if things fall out of lockstep, or people try to sync from Genesis, that might fail. So especially if we don't have an ability to sync from Genesis post-transition, we might not advertise to throw on validators from external parties, but we still do have those 100 validators, which yeah, that would also fail. But let's get into it. Client updates, just general progress on the Kintsugi sprint. How are things going? Any issues you run into? State of things. Who wants to kick us off?
I quickly have a question for Perry. Do you mind if I mine it during the transition?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Cool.
We're merge ready, so it should be no problem at all.
I'm going to like mine past merge. So
okay, yeah. Feel free to create as much chaos as you want.
Sweet. Okay, cool. I just linked the milestones in there. Obviously, a lot of y'all hanging out on that dock these days. Does anybody want to give us some updates on where things stand? Just bring us all together. Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at the milestone document. Looks like a number of clients are hitting that M2, which means we have this DevNet coming up, and expect a bunch of M3 this week. Anything relevant people want to share? No big deal if not. We have things to talk about.
Yeah, so we finished, so for Lighthouse, we finished implementing the on-merge block consensus test this week. Mark's been working on M3 with a mix of implementations. It's been a bit slow getting all the different client configurations running, but he's been making great progress lately. Yeah, Paul's started finalizing some parts of the optimistic sync implementation this week, and he's expecting to have something running late next week.
And so what is running right now is just lockstep. So someone wouldn't be able to sync from Genesis post-transition on this DevNet, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah, I can go next. So on the Prism side, pretty similar to Lighthouse. We have Lockstep working with Get. We're going to try Nethermind today, and then mostly just focus 100% on optimistic sync. Just it's pretty non-trivial changes. And yeah, I want to thank like Paul, Lighthouse team, and then Adrian, TQ team. They've been doing great work on there. So we've been just following along, learning from their lessons. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
For Lodestar, we have integrated both Get and Nethermind in CI. So every commit, we guarantee that we can run M1 and M2. And optimistic sync in our case, it would be not hard to implement. We already have a PR for that, so it should be merged soon.
All right. On the Nimbus side, we have the latest text. We reached M2 with Get and Nethermind, but we are a little bit behind on optimistic sync. Hope to get there soon.
Cool.
From Teku, we are working in parallel on optimistic sync and also on all the consents in the engine APIs call, because the the changes from around the merge interop was not was quite significant on our side. So we are still working on everything to make some integration tests yet. So we are a bit late.
Got it. Anybody on the execution layer want to give us some updates?
I can start with the execution layer.
Thank you.
So for us, we're I created a branch. It's called Beacon on top of 4399, which is the branch that should be used for the merge testnet. So if you want to join the merge testnet from like you want to run your own client to like verify everything and so on, just use that. And we're trying to get the Amphora specs into master. This is of course like it's not easy to get stuff into Geth master because yeah, we have to be very careful about like not touching or not modifying current code. But yeah, that should be done this week, and the changes from Amphora are already lined up, and 4399 is already lined up. So yeah, looking good on our side.
And what's the state of sync under proof of stake paradigm?
So the beacon on top of 4399 branch, I know I should have named it something different. That one has the normal sync till TDD, and afterwards, once it gets the signal from the execution from the consensus layer, it will jump into reverse header sync. So that's fully should be working.
Okay, great.
Hey, so on Nethermind side, we do have the first clients on the M2. So this is the Lighthouse, Lodestar, Nimbus, and we started verifying. So there's the work on Prism as mentioned before. So hopefully that will be resolved soon as well. And we also thinking now of using the merge mock and wrap like the whole thing together. So I might be slightly wrong here. Marek is off today, but generally he's working with Sarah full time on this. So yeah, they're progressing nicely, and I'll be verifying this testnet that was launched from our side. If everything looks promising, it will continue with all the next steps. Thank you.
Mario from Mario Vega, who recently joined the foundation to work on testing, has created a really nice test tool for execution layers. And he wrote a lot of really nice tests that do things like reorg and stuff like this. And one thing that he actually noticed is that there's still some confusion about the timestamp and how much the execution layer should check the timestamp. Because right now, like I made a mistake and we're currently accepting blocks with the same timestamp as the parent, which like should never happen, but yeah. So I think it would be nice to have a bit of discussion around what are the rules for the consensus layer, for the execution layer regarding the timestamp in the execute payload. In the fork chess update
Right.
message.
Okay, we can talk about that a bit after the TT override issues. Okay. Light client, you've also been working on testing tool. This is different than Mario's testing tool, yes? Would you like to give us an update and where the two things might fit together?
Yeah, the testing tool that I'm working on is a little bit more focused on allowing people to write full feature tests in Python, where Mario's is a little bit more about just executing these static tests that have been generated usually by hand. And I think this is working pretty well right now because his tool is mainly supporting, I think, only engine API directives, but maybe it also has blocks, whereas this tool will not only support engine API directives, but it will support defining transitions of blocks. And so it will be able to provide both of those. But either way, this is just like generating the fixtures, and there will still be a runner that will execute them. And merge mock is likely to be that runner, but also what Mario has could potentially be expanded to provide those to clients, those fixtures.
Got it. And is merge mock in a state in which people are currently using it? Anyone using it? Light client, you know if anyone's using it?
I think Nethermind was using it for a little bit, but I think they were having some trouble because it doesn't support click. I don't know if anyone else is wanting it to support click. I could add it.
Sorry, which one was it? I missed that.
Merge mock.
Merge mock. Are you guys still using merge mock?
So we're using it at the interrupt, and only at the beginning we needed click, I believe. What you mean? Nethermind does support click, but you said the merge mock didn't support click, but later we switched to ithash. Was it? Maybe it was more about ithash. So I'm
okay.
Yeah, and I was just discussing it yesterday with like bringing 3 people to the table of getting merge mock, because we wanted also to use it for testing MEV boost and wrap Nethermind around MEV boost and launch everything together with merge mock. So we'll be looking at it probably tomorrow.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Message me if you have any issues or things that you guys are looking to add.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Any other updates on client software or testing software before we talk about the TTD stuff? Okay. Peter dropped into the Discord chat the other day and let us know that the modifications in 3675 for the Kintsugi sprint around TTD and how TTD can be overridden on consensus layer without the execution layer knowing until they get a signal, is kind of untenable with respect to how consensus rules are generally done in Geth and likely in other execution layer clients. Instead of having some discrete value that triggered consensus changes across all branches at that value, is essentially a signal. 3675 required essentially whitelisting a branch as, okay, the consensus rules are different on this branch, with the signal from fork choice updated. This was to attempt to minimize where overrides needed to happen, but likely induced too much complexity on the execution layer to handle that, and would require a lot of custom logic to be able to do fork changes on that type of branch logic. So TTD is fine in that respect, but Mikhail has an issue up on the options on where overrides and how overrides might be done. If we do go back to both sides knowing it in lockstep, Mikhail, do you want to discuss the options here?
Yeah, sure. So the options, basically, we may have no override option, like override settings, which can be done via command line interface. So this is like a hard option, and the implication of doing it this way is that in case of emergency merge, in case of when we will need to reset TTD or like fork or make an upgrade of a particular block by specifying as hash, which is the terminal block hash feature, then we will just have to make release of CL and EL clients. And what's the downside of this? It may delay our reaction by some hours, because it might be the case that releasing the new binary delays the upgrade of the nodes in the network, and that's been confirmed by Peter from the comment in this issue. So
right,
we might accept this delay and go with it.
Right, so we might need, say, 24 hours to release all clients and then 36 hours for everyone to upgrade, rather than 36 or 48 hours just for everyone to upgrade if they had a command line. And again, I mean, those are aggressive timelines, even then. I will say the TTD override generally would be to accelerate TTD, because hash power is falling off the network, and so that is not like as timely of a concern. But a TBH override would be, because we're under very active attack and attempting to pick a block that has already happened to be the merge block, so that timeliness is of the essence there.
Right, so TTD override is not that time sensitive as TBH override. Also bear in mind that even with this option, it might be that a user upgrades its CL client software but forgets to do this on the EL side, and we fall into inconsistency between these values anyway. So, and we have to do something with that. Like, one of the potential way to handle this case is EL checking these conditions per execute payload and per fork choice updated, and respond with the corresponding error. So if CL tries to force the transition at the TTD, which is not expected by EL client, it may respond with error and say that this is wrong. Like this transition is attempted to happen on the wrong TTD, so I give up. That's just to aid investigating into this kind of accident if it happens. So the next option is just to have the override settings in CLI arguments for both CL and EL. So it might doing it this way if we consider that TBH override, which is time sensitive, can be like boosted, can benefit from this kind of way, from the command line arguments. So otherwise, yeah, there is an option number 3, which I don't think viable, because yeah, the problem, also one thing to consider, one complexity to consider here. If we have a TBA terminal block hash override, we will have to set the epoch, the certain epoch, when the transition to proof of stake takes over on the CL side. So everything can, there was like a thought in the direction that execution layer may handle all of this transition stuff. And consensus layer client will just poll the state of transition and react accordingly. But it appears that with this terminal block hash override option, it's not it's not possible to be done by only EL. So it's not enough. So CL should also have some options to be overridden.
Right.
So this is why handling all this transition stuff by EL doesn't seem viable, in case if we have to have this terminal block hash. And I think we really want to have this option. So that's all regarding options. And in my opinion, it's just, you know, also Peter proposed to have both options, to have like, of course, we have command line arguments that override those settings. Also, we give users an option to either use these overridden settings or wait for the release with the new values and updating their software. And I think if we give this option, we will have to consider the worst case scenario in terms of time of updating the nodes. So we will, these options will not, in this scenario, these options will not bias any you know, time boost. So it will be just as in the worst case, because in the worst case, user will have to just wait for release and update their clients. So
Right.
In this case, yeah, okay.
I also think it's even if we do have the manual overrides, in most scenarios, I would presume that clients cut releases as well.
Yep.
Just because
Definitely.
that's kind of the simple path to modify the configuration. Okay. Do people have particular opinions on option 1 or 2 to discuss here, or do people want to take it to the issue? I will note that these are exceptional cases that we won't see on the devnets in the next few weeks, where the consensus layer and execution layer will have the same TDD for the next 3 devnets. So this does not really accept these logic changes that we need to work through don't really affect the standard path. Opinions on overrides? If not, whoever shows up to that issue is going to have an impact in the next few days, because we're going to work through the spec changes there. Any questions about this? Anything that's not clear? Okay. Mikhail, I'd say that we prioritize in the next couple of days just getting the change on 3675 done, which essentially just the logic change of like you do know TTD, and then we can either add the client settings or subtract the client settings, depending on discussions on this issue.
Yeah, right. So it's basically to revert one of the changes.
Right.
I mean, yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, it means that yes, we will have like TTD is like the only trigger for the transition on yield side. And the terminal block hash will also be like will also mean that TTD has reset, and the block hash and yeah, there is a whitelisted block hash that we want to see on the proof of work branch that we are forking off, that we are upgrading. That's how it's supposed to be implemented.
Cool. Thank you. Other Kintsugi discussion items for today? How's our difficulty look, Perry, on the devnet?
We're about 85 to 86% there.
Okay.
So probably in the next half hour.
Cool. And the intention is to do another devnet 1 week from today. So we'll keep doing that through November. Great. Any other Kintsugi related items? Perfect. Thank you. Moving on to consensus layer stuff. I know generally people had client updates. If you have non-merge, non-Kintsugi related updates that you'd like to share, go for it. Great.
Yeah, maybe on Lighthouse. Paul's still been working on the Flashbot stuff. I'll share with you all a link to a nice document he put together detailing the changes to the consensus clients that would be needed to support the Flashbot system. The intention is to get a safe multi-client Flashbot solution for post-merge Ethereum. Yeah, that document is quite thorough, inviting everyone to take a look and provide feedback if you have some time. Michael's been working on the standard validated client API. We have an implementation and finalizing the details before we push it into review on our end. And we also spent some time working on an edge case with fork choice. And Danny, you've opened the spec issue, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, that's about it for us.
Yeah, thank you, Lion and Michael Sproul, for managing the Key Manager API repo. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Research spec, etc. We'll move on to that. There is an edge case identified as an issue on the fork choice. This is 2727. It's a PR. This has been, I think, identified as something that smells funny by many in the past. And finally, when the Lighthouse team brought this to my attention again at the beginning of this week, or maybe the end of last week, we did finally work through the problem and identify the bug. And fortunately, it's incredibly simplifying. The justification should always be atomically updated with finality. The exceptional case where it's not puts you in a kind of irrecoverable state. The only way to do so is if you / 1/3 or more. So this is not an issue I expect to see in the next couple of months. So we're going to clean it up in public and just get the release out rolling. That is we're going to get that merged in, and then get the proposer boost rebased on top of this, the current fork choice, and get proposer boosting out next day, next couple of days, and get that released along with some additional merge transition test vectors. And as discussed in previous calls, getting proposer boost out prior to the merge, so getting it tested over the next couple of months and in test nets, and to be released prior to or at the merge is on the critical path. Check out 2727 if you're interested. It will be in the next release. Other research, spec, or other related items to talk about today?
I did put in the agenda, at least, I did a plug for PR 2649, which is historical batches. We considered it for Altair, but decided there was not enough time to get it done properly there.
Right.
What those discussions led me to was basically that there exists a very much more simple way of introducing it. So there's now a PR app that demonstrates what that very much more simple world would look like. And it's basically just swapping a field, not caring about any backfills or anything. Just taking the feature, just taking the current code really and splitting it up into two fields. It's not that much. What's cool about it is that once we do that, there's been talks about all kinds of archival nodes and offloading Ethereum data off the peer-to-peer protocol and so on. And this is really just a small step towards that world where verifying data that comes from random sources on the internet is important, like becomes more important. And with that patch, we can do so very elegantly. So I kind of feel that the benefits are there and the effort is not so much. So it might be a good idea to get this merged as like before the merge as well. I kind of like that idea because then the execution data is also covered by this simple way to verify blocks.
I think given where we're at in the state of the merge, that's and development progress and intentions on attempting to get releases done early next year, I think that we should probably put this off for Shanghai. And if it is simple, the only thing on the consensus layer for Shanghai is withdrawals, which is relatively complicated. There's probably two operations, and there's an accumulator and a new state for validators. But this, in addition to that, I think would be very tractable with respect to the consensus layer updates.
I'm not saying it's not an option. I'm saying that this one feels attractive now. It's small enough. But anyway, if anybody else feels that it's a good idea to do now, then feel free to put it in the ticket and then we can reopen the discussion. Otherwise, we'll, I guess, postpone it again.
If you're actually speaking about storing execution payloads in CL, I kind of like this idea. Today we were speaking also about this, and this is something that I really would like to have. Basically to reduce a lot of space in CL, and actually the data belongs to EL, and we should not actually try to store that. I think that will make CL more simpler.
So this is two different issues, right, Jacek?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's two issues. They're a little bit related in the sense that
yeah, but I'm talking about the first one. Sorry, I'm talking about the first one. Yeah, please go ahead.
No, what I was going to say was that we need a solution to the duplicate storage problem, but there's been a couple of approaches discussed there. One would be to like get rid of the duplicate storage by just storing a hash in the CL basically of that data. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, the way the spec is structured right now, the CL data is a superset of the execution data, no matter how you look at it. So if you have the CL data, you can always verify the execution data, kind of, if you trust the CL data, right? So if we do the historical batches, we can verify both CL and EL data from the get-go. That's nice. That said, a separate issue is like, where do we actually store the EL data? And currently both, and that's a bit sad as well. And there are ways to work this through. Mikhail has one proposal that I would actually have him present because I don't want to mess it up. One proposal was that Geth already has a way to fetch execution data from the RPC API. So we would basically promote that into an official API, so to speak, so that when CLs talk to each other, they can get access to the full data and feed it to their own ELs. I mean, there's a few design options there. And I put it in the agenda, that one today, mainly so that people could take a look at it. I think it deserves a write-up and a discussion in an issue. So I would consider the current one just a preview.
Okay. Right, and so one of the primary concerns here, or not, one of the primary things that CL needs to be able to handle is serving beacon blocks in their fullness through, I think it's something like a 5-month period as specified by the P2P spec. And so the ability to prune, right now, consensus layer has to have duplicate execution payloads for the execution layer on at least that range of blocks. And we could, which I don't know the size of that, but that is just additional requirements in the node and purely duplicate.
Yeah, exactly. And sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that's how my two little proposals fit together as well. That like one makes the other easier to, one gives more options for the other one, basically, how you deal with it. It's just easier from client perspective to write good user experience features when that kind of verifiability is available.
I was just going to say that one of the ideas regarding querying payloads over engine API is that EL clients already serving block bodies via ETH protocol on the network. So we may like work off of this assumption. So it's like basically the pruning will prune transactions from execution payload on CL side, and this is what can be like outsourced to the execution layer client. Of course, there are implications of like should it be like when this pruning should be done, but in general, like this kind of stuff may plug in to the functionality that EL already has, but it should be exposed on the engine API. So that's the idea. That's the idea I have just recently thought about.
I would also say that like probably the current duplication, it comes from the fact that it's just slightly easier to not have that complexity during the whole bootstrap cycle where you're doing the initial sync and the optimistic sync and so on, and suddenly you have a lot of talking to do with EL in particular orders and so on. I think that's why right now it's just duplicated because it's easier to do. But yeah, that's one solution for sure. I'm not disagreeing here.
Because like with the execution payload header, you may bootstrap the sync process on the L side. So like bodies or transactions are not necessary each time. I don't know if it's beneficial in any way, but just a thought.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I think the path would be to take the ideas that are floating around and put out a concrete proposal on deduplication and requisite methods to gather them back, or if there are no methods to gather them back, a justification on why. But I don't think, unless we change the P2P spec, I don't think that we can do that. Okay. Other discussion points for today?
So this relates a bit with the topic that was just discussed. We had discussion here that maybe it makes sense at some point to move deposit contracts logic back to, or not back, but to execution layer instead of the client layer. Was there consensus layer? Was there discussion for that?
Most discussions I've seen around modifications is essentially you still use the deposit contract, but to shorten the ETH1 voting and to even one block, and if a bad vote essentially comes in, that's an invalid block, so that you can do very fast deposits but not have to change the logic. What are you proposing?
Well, my main, I would say not proposal, but just an idea, as it feels that the deposit stuff could be handled in the execution layer instead of having this extra part in the client layer. So I was just wondering, maybe there was a discussion about that before that I missed.
Handled in the execution layer, as in there's more of a native opcode or way to elect rather than sending it into a contract. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. So basically, I'm saying, was there a general discussion to handle this deposit thing at execution layer, which seems that it's a good place to be there.
No, and I think the default is an attempt to not have to rewire that logic if it works, just because there's 10 million other things on the docket, but I haven't seen like a solid proposal to alter that logic in a simplification way.
Okay.
Other items?
I have a question related to the PM repo. I see the new agenda is in the Ethereum/PM and the old one is archived. But unfortunately, I do not find the folder where the notes for meeting 76 would go.
Right. I have not done that. Tim, Trent, and I can figure out where to put things. I guess we'll make a new a new folder mirroring all core devs. We'll just call it consensus layer meetings and drop them in there.
Okay,
Or the
thank you.
first person to make notes can do that as well. If you want to give them just tell them to do that.
So we have to take all the earlier notes from the consensus spec and the ETH2 PM and bring it back here, the entire folder.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
If y'all want to spearhead that, that'd be awesome.
Okay, and I see the message from Tim that he'll be creating a new one, so I will sync with him. Thank you.
Perfect. And anything else?
Yes, just a comment on the crawlers. A few weeks ago, I mentioned the issue of NodeWatch showing multiple for digests in their stats. Just after that, the next day, they released a patch in which they filter peers by the client version. This is better. However, I think this is still not enough because you could run a alter-ready client in another testnet. And so I think we're still seeing statistics that relate to multiple networks, not only the mainnet. So we have put a pull request. I'm sharing on the chat to fix this issue. So yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Nice. I can knock on their door and make sure they're taking a look at it. Okay, this is in the past 4 hours. Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And other items.
Hello. I'd like to check if we have some consensus about the code name of the merge upgrade. Like we had some offline discussion on Discord, and what do people think about, like, we can open an issue and core devs can propose some options, and then we can maybe decide in the next course or do a pop vote, the community vote, something like that, like what the status we have right now.
With the idea to name it a B star and pick a B star.
Yeah, I would vote for that.
Right. And Paul had mentioned the name for calling things the merge. There's the merge fork. There's the actual merge. There are PRs to be merged. It's actually kind of difficult to communicate and write about. So if we call the whole thing a meta name, that might be useful. Tim, we need names for the EL and CL upgrades. Are we saying that we need 2 names? Are we saying that we can call the whole thing 1 name?
The releases will have like a name. Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion at this point, but because the CL releases need to come first and whatnot, so like, yeah, I don't know if it helps or hinders clarity to have separate names on the EL or the CL.
Just call it Serenity.
Serenity includes scalability upgrades.
I think we should have 2 separate names for EL and CL. But in terms of updating a node client software,
right,
it should be better, probably 1 name. So trade-offs.
Certainly. And
yeah,
the name on the execution layer is not so obvious when we've pretty much said that the fork after the merge is called Shanghai, so there's not a city to slot in there. Perry asked if someone can buy a star and name it the same as a city, merging both the naming schemes. Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. Star DAO. Star fork name DAO.
Yeah, seems to be all the rage nowadays.
We can buy anything. Who do you buy stars from? Does somebody own them?
It's usually just
Maybe-
random companies that claim to be naming authorities.
Nice.
Isn't it whoever discovers them can name them? And basically, yeah, you influence how they name it, probably.
Well, that there are like multiple competing people or entities that try to name things. So yeah, sure, that's one thing. But who's got the authority to actually name it? So there are
Ethereum
companies that
Foundation.
want this. Yeah.
Ethereum Foundation should have a grant program for finding a star in the space
to solve this difficult problem. Okay. There's a lot of interesting problems to tackle there. Anything else before we close the meeting today? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I believe that we have an attempted Kintsugi devnet go through the transition process very soon. So we'll chat about it on Discord as it happens. Take care. Talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Best peeps.
Bye.
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 Yeah.
Thank you.